Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. We have a very special unboxing today, long awaited by me and a whole pile of other people. This is brand new, off the presses from Compass Games, The Third World War. So what we have here is a new edition of a 4-game series that was released between 1984 and 1986 by Game Designers Workshop and designed by Frank Chadwick. Now, those 4 games were Arctic Front, Battle for Germany, Southern Front, and Persian Gulf. Battle for Germany was the first volume in the series, and it was actually just called The Third World War, Battle for Germany, but they I don't know what the original plan was or what, but there were 3 more volumes that eventually came out, and there was talk of more at the time. Now Compass has this out in a brand new designer signature edition that promises, if nothing else, to not make major changes to the game system, but to upgrade the components in a huge and significant way. So let's open her up and take a look at what we got here. First of all, I like the box on the side. It shows you all 4. The other side is like that too, which is cool. We're actually going to take a look at the back here. Complexity equals Rubik's Cube. Time scale 1 turn, 1 week. Map scale 1 hex is 45 kilometers. Unit scale is divisions and brigades. Number of players 2 to 7, which certainly sounds about right. High solitaire suitability, sure. And it's got a whole bunch of components, which include 6 22 by 34 inch maps, 9 9/16 inch counter sheets, numerous player aid cards and displays, 20 diplomacy cards, 1 playbook, 1 rulebook, and 4 6-sided dice. And we can see that the game artist here is Bruce Yerian. So super excited about this. I ordered this ages ago when they announced it, or shortly afterwards anyway, so I've been waiting for it this entire time. So I am very happy to finally have it in my hands. And this is another one of those things where I have actually played the originals, and they are excellent. So 3-inch box, if I haven't mentioned that, which is frankly, I may still have problems getting this all back in, but we will see. First of all, we have 4 6-sided dice. We also have a Compass Games current catalog. This is, of course, the holiday, I assume anyway, that this is the holiday sale catalog. Yes, indeed. But the holiday sale is actually over. So check the website out if you want to see current prices on stuff. Here is the deck of cards. Now, these originally came with Persian Gulf, and you kind of use play of these cards in sort of a pregame round to kind of build the situation that results in the explosion of the Third World War. And there are decisions that the players will need to make here too, so you can do things as the Soviets, like general mobilization, invade, and these have effects on how the various minor countries in the Persian Gulf react. So, and there's 20 of these. I think it's 10 for each side, 12 for the Soviets. So it's actually 24. Did I say 20? Maybe I said 24. I don't know. Anyway, it's going to take some time to extract all of these goodies from the box. So be patient. Okay, so we have some displays here. And it does seem like you're expected to cut this along the center dashed line, which you may or may not end up doing. So this is the Western Europe theater. This is the Eastern Europe theater. This is the Northern theater, and these are the NATO versions of those theaters. Here, on the other hand, you have the Warsaw Pact Southwestern theater, which would be like the Balkan and Italian front, I assume. Well, I guess not. Balkan theater, Persian Gulf theater, Western Asia theater. Southwestern might mean just Western Europe, Central Germany, in the Soviet sense. So we have 2 big rule books, which we will get to momentarily. Let's do all the player aids. Holy cow. Let's do all the player aids and stuff first, of which there is an absolutely crazy amount. Okay, so let's look at we've been able to see previews of the maps for a long time, so let's quickly buzz through this literally inch-thick stack of player aids here. So we got the 2 air displays. We have combined game NATO setup display. Wow, okay, for everything, so that's cool. Battle for Germany NATO setup display. So for those wondering whether you should pick up this or pick up the recent NATO Cold War Gone Hot, which is another new edition of an older game. That's an I've played that too. That's also an excellent game. The scope here is much larger, right? You get kind of all of Europe and the Middle East to fight over. Even though like the unit scale and the map scale is kind of similar, there is also some gaps in the original maps that are filled by the maps in this edition, unless I'm very much mistaken. I'm unfortunately not going to be able to show you all the maps set up. Because I ain't got anything like that kind of space. But you can see definitely there's a huge array of setup cards, both for the scenarios and for the combined campaign game. A lot of which are on these 8.5 by 11 cards. These have sort of a satin finish, I'd say low satin finish at that. And they're on a pretty nice thick cardstock. So a huge proportion of these, that's a big scenario, a huge proportion of that inch of player aids is these setup cards. And there's, like this one, for example, is a reinforcement display. So you got turn 1, turn 3, whenever. This is when new stuff shows up for the Warsaw Pact, for example. More of those. Here's an Arctic Front scenario NATO setup displays. So, just tons and tons of stuff. All right, so we have here an expanded sequence of player aid, which certainly sounds handy. And on the back, we have... Okay, so this is... Yeah, okay. So you've got Pact Segment, Pact First Impulse, NATO Reserve Impulse, Pact Segment. I recall this, where each side gets kind of 2 turns inside the turn, right? Two phases in which to do stuff. And then you have a final segment. So initial segment, and then you have all these different, so Pact Segment, First Impulse, Reserve Impulse, Second Impulse, NATO Segment, NATO First Impulse, NATO Second Impulse, Final Segment, okay? That's starting to become familiar. It has been a few years. Combat Odds Track. This is the thing that GMT liked, not GMT, GDW did often, as they provide markers for that or something like that. You got 2 of these things, and these are single-sided. Some are double-sided, some are single-sided. You got 2 of these as well. Here's your other cards with CRTs. I do feel like presentationally, this is very of a piece looking like the new version of NATO from Compass. I don't know if it was the same graphic designer or not. So we have national factional data charts, which there's the critical loss thresholds. I remember that. There's an interesting thing going on here in the combat system too, where you have like a unit proficiency that has a huge impact on how well units actually fight. Here we have Warsaw Pact off-map movement and NATO off-map movement tracks, so that's interesting. Here's another game turn track, or the game turn track. Here is, looks like these are tracking those losses for the different countries. You're taking off losses, the countries will collapse, and that does stuff. Okay, so huge pile of player aids and setup charts. And I always personally very much like to see setup charts because I think they speed setup up. So, all right. So next, here's the remaining contents of the box. Our big stack of maps and 2 sets of counter sheets. Actually, there's one that's probably just the size of the bags. They probably couldn't. I don't know. Maybe they collated this one separately. Who knows? But they do look like 9/16" counters. They're on a thick, but not like maddeningly thick, won't fit in my counter clipper thick stock. So those are nice. This is the same stock as these. Maybe. It looks like it. I can tell you they're bagged because these are the counters that will fall out of the sprue. We'll look at those in a minute. We're definitely looking at the counters. So we should have 6 maps here. And I do, in fact, see 6 maps. So this is a Middle Persian Gulf map. Let's look at what I think. I'm trying to find this looks like the central Germany map, which will be very familiar for people who, are familiar with the many, many Cold War gone hot type games in the era. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that while GDW's games maps were fairly nice for the 1970s, many of them were in fact released in the 1980s. And while their counters were, I think, a little bit better, but their maps visually don't really look that good anymore. I'd be interested in comparing. Clearly, the scale here is a little higher, more kilometers per hex on this map than there is in the NATO Cold War Gone Hot. It goes without saying that I think there is a huge graphical upgrade here, to say the least. And here we have Northern Air Theater, Western Europe Air Theater. Down here we have the Southwestern Air Theater, and there's going to be a Balkan Air Theater over here. So I like the map. I think the map looks nice. Got East Germany here, West Germany, France, the Netherlands, and Belgium, Poland. You do actually have another map, and this is, if I haven't mentioned it, now this is one of the Arctic Front maps. This could be it. I think this might be it. So there was a kind of gap where Poland was on the original maps, and this map that I am trying very badly to show you right now fills that gap and takes us all the way into Belarus and parts of Ukraine. So speaking of Cold War Gone Hot, Ukraine. So huge map upgrade, big map area. The Middle Eastern maps, I'm not going to try to set this up probably very soon, but it is on the table to get this played again. And if the original games are any indication, then the I almost said Middle Earth, the Middle East maps will adjoin the rest of the maps at kind of a weird angle. So that may create table space problems for some players in some spaces. And you may end up having to put the Middle East section on a separate table. All right, so this is one sheet. So nevertheless, I am going to take it out of the bag because I want to verify that all the counters are on the same stock. Not sure I have ever had that problem with Compass, but I have had that problem with a certain other game company, who I shall not name here at this time, in this fine company that we have here tonight. So let's stab that. And we're gonna have, I'm sure, some of these counters fall out of the sheets, because that is why they're getting shrink wrapped nowadays. Nevertheless, they're nice counters, and I'd rather have, because I don't buy games to sit around unpunched, at least in principle, or at least I tell myself that, I would rather have counters that fall out of the sheets rather than counters that have to be torn from the sheets, which is irritating and causes preparation of the game for play to be more trouble than it should be. Okay? All right, so sheet 9 was the lonesome sheet in the back. And here we have sheet 1, which clearly consists mainly of Soviets. Okay, I wouldn't normally do this. And it's come up a lot in Europa games, which of course also is a thing that came out of Game Designers Workshop back in the day. But I've got the color key behind me so that I can hopefully figure out who everybody is. So on sheet 1 here, we do have Soviets. These tan units look like they are Czechs. The gray units look like they are East Germans. The pinks are Romanians. I think these break stop sign reds are Afghan units, actually. Possibly Soviet faction Afghans. It looks like that's the case. More Czechs here. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, here we have what looks like more Soviet stuff. Bulgarians, unless I'm missing my guess completely. These are probably Finns. This would probably be Austria. This it might be Sweden. So these are Israelis. These are Bulgarians, as we said. This is Iraq and Iran. And I have to assume that these are, in fact, Finns, because there's Karelia here, and some other things that are what looks like Corelli anyway, and they're ski troops, right? So there's that. So a lot of pieces here, man. And it looks at a glance like I will be able to get 2 counter trays cleanly into the box, which means good luck. we may have to have an outside the box storage solution for this. I do see registration is just a hair off on this particular sheet. I don't think it's off enough that I will write an email to ask for a replacement, but it is a little bit off. But the numbers are not actually off the counters. All right, so here we have Yugoslavs. This would be Swedes. This is probably Albanians. Syrians, Jordanians. Not sure who these are. These are Italians, UK, Canada, Norway, Spain, Denmark. So a lot of factions on here. Like, holy cow, a lot of factions. I think these are Greeks. This would be Turks, French, West Germans. Quite a bit of West Germans, as you can imagine. Here's U.S. In this light, anyway, the color difference between the West Germans and the U.S. is not huge. Here we have Hungarians. Losses on units, you'll actually degrade that unit proficiency, and that's what you're taking these hits against. And that's what these are. These represent hits. So that's 1 hit, 3 hits, and 7 hits, and 3. So I wish they'd have put an actual Arabic numeral on those as well, in addition to the little sparky symbols is all. These are tac nukes, as I recall, or something like that. Here's some supply markers. Now, like, a lot of these markers are really, really clear, right? These are Shakens. These all have names on them. These all have names on them. That's cool. I guess I don't mind too much. I don't know what these are off the top of my head. They could be possession. I'm not sure. Here's ruins. And there's what look like 3 identical sheets of those. And then we get into sheet number 4. These are the control markers. More supplies, which are front and back counters. More hits. We've got what looks like Irish here, actually. No, these are Iranians. They're Iranian guards. And here's a couple more U.S. Here's a Pomkis site, which is the Pomkis sites were these like pre-designated American caches of equipment and material that American troops could, in principle, just fly the guys over. They go to the Pomkis site, outfit all their stuff from there. It's all ready to go. So that was the basic idea. And then you've got all these odds markers, which again was a thing that GW liked to do. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I'm also somebody that kind of usually has a little notebook next to me when I'm playing a game so that I can write that stuff down. So I think, as you can kind of see, I can't get a third counter tray in this. And I think the chances of me getting 9 counter sheets into 2 trays is really slim. So this may end up being one of those rare games, because I will totally play this. One of those rare games where I just have to suck it up and put the counters in plastic trays outside of the box. That's possible. Then again, I may end up using these trays instead, and that might actually work out fairly well. So these trays are trays I've talked about in the OCS video. Well, I got the counter sheets in here, so I think I can get 4 of these trays in here, and 2 of these trays will fit more counters and better organize them than a GMT sheet, because it's not blow formed and there's less dead space in this, and you can fit 2 of these in a box at least. So this may end up being a game that I use these for. Now, thinking about that, that's a really good idea. All right, so let's take a quick look at the rulebook and the playbook. Matte finish, feels really nice. 44 pages on the rulebook, full color. Not a hugely complicated game system, by the way, but they are adding, extra stuff in this one to accommodate the game-specific rules for each game. You can obviously, I guess we'll see when we look at the scenarios, but my expectation here is that we'll be able to play any of the original single games alongside the huge combined campaign game as well. Our game that we played was a combined game, but we did not include the Persian Gulf because we couldn't fit it on the table. All right, so matte finish rulebook, full color. You can see the proficiency rating is the number on the end, and I think the movement rate is set by the unit type, I believe. So air units, there's a considerably more detailed air system in here than there is in NATO, either version of NATO. So if you really kind of want to fight the air war out as an element of your Cold War Gone Hot simulation, that without necessarily it being an air game, if you want an air game, go look at Red Storm from GMT. But if you want a big land game that also happens to include the air war, then this is something to take a look at. And I don't know what the because I paid for it so long ago, I don't remember what the MSRP is on this thing. However, and of course I got the the pre-order price, but for the amount of stuff that's in it and for the amount of play that I think you could get out of this box, I think even a quite high price is pretty justified. So, all right. So then we have. Let's keep the cards out because I'll put those in a rubber band later. Rulebook looks good. All right, here's the playbook. It's like noticeably weightier than the rulebook. This is 84 pages. Okay, so what do we got? So we've got Battle for Germany, Southern Front, Arctic Front, Persian Gulf. So we have essentially separate sections in here for each of the individual games. And then we have War in Europe and the combined game. War in Europe is probably what we just played, so that's probably minus Persian Gulf, and combined game is probably everything. So first we have a section, so we're in the Battle for Germany stuff here, okay? So this is the briefing. This gives you sort of the backstory of what's going on in the game universe. Page registration looks great, by the way. Let's see. Whole bunch of notes. We have a whole bunch of notes. Why is the UK missing from the map while Norway and Sweden are on it? Okay. Player notes. Here's our scenarios, okay? 3 Battle for Germany scenarios. The standard game, the short game, and the extended game. Okay. So, basically you have one Battle for Germany scenario, which I think is in line with the original. But you have 3 different length selections. Here we have Southern Front. This gives you a big TO&E table here that tells you what's in these units, which is pretty cool. That is information that you do not normally get. Southern Front's the same way, standard, short, and extended. Oh, hell, this is another one. So this one has a standard 8-turn game, the extended game, which lasts for 12 turns, and the Balkan Entente scenario, which lasts for 8 turns. Okay, this scenario assumes that Romania, Greece, and Yugoslavia have attempted to form a neutral third power bloc in the Balkans. All 3 begin as neutral powers. Okay, so that's interesting. Arctic Front. This, of course, is Scandinavia. And you can absolutely see the influence of this in the Thin Red Line 1985 series, where they were clearly inspired heavily by the Next War from SPI, but also by this Third World War series, because they also chose to start their war in the Persian Gulf and provide a deck of cards to start building the scenario with, thereby increasing play value considerably. So there's 2 Arctic Front scenarios. There's just a standard and an extended. And let's see what they do for Persian Gulf. And the amount of just reading material in here is really high. Okay, looks like the same deal, standard and extended. And then we have Battle for Germany. Oh, cool. So you could combine these in a whole bunch of different ways. Here's Battle for Germany plus Southern Front. Tells you how to do that. Battle for Germany plus Arctic Front. War in Europe, which is all 3 of those. And then the combined game, which puts everything together. Maps, actually, it looks like maps A, B, C, E, and F. That makes me think that one of the maps is like a central area map that you don't need. Or for scenarios. So I'd have to look at that, and I don't have space for that. But as you can see, the setup is enormous. In the back, we do have some... Here's a huge list of nation and faction abbreviations. These are on the counters, by the way. So even if you've forgotten what the light pink as opposed to the medium pink counters are, they're on the numbers are on the counters, so you don't actually have to guess. And in many cases, maybe you'll have to look the abbreviation up, but in many cases, I think you'll figure it out, because you're, after all, looking at them on the map at the same time. So Project team development notes. Lloyd Bonagura, Eric Farago, Chris Fawcett, and Greg Warren. I know that there was a very dedicated team based on the Compass Games roundtables that they do. There was a very dedicated team slaving away for the last couple of years to put this thing together. There are, so I'm giving you the Cliff's Notes version here. There shouldn't be any major changes here, right? Huge component upgrade. Obviously, there is, I think, a certain degree of refinements, maybe some OB changes, that kind of thing, that are in here. So you shouldn't expect this to be an identical game to the originals if you have the originals just with upgraded components. But it is the same game for all intents and purposes. So fans of the original should be very pleased with this upgrade. And frankly, folks who are interested in this topic, I do recommend taking a look at this. I mean, maybe you decide it's for you and maybe you don't, but I do recommend taking a look at this. This may end up being the magnum opus on this subject. And it is, space-wise, although I'm saying this for a 6-map game, right? So bear that in mind. It's still smaller than the 1985 stuff. And the scale is quite a bit different. And the play is, I think, probably going to be more streamlined. Let me put it that way. I don't want to say a bad thing about the 1985 series that I don't mean. But this is not as complicated as those. Let me just put it that way. But the scale's different too, right? So to some extent, that's a bit of an apples and oranges comparison. But they do happen to be on pretty much the same topic. This is 1989. The other one's 1985. So between those three games, this Third World War, the 1985 series from Thin Red Line Games, and NATO, the Cold War Gone Hot, you can make your own decision as to which one of those is best for you. I have pretty positive opinions on all of them. I have only played 2 of the 3, however. So, this has been the long-awaited, much-anticipated unboxing video of the Third World War from Frank Chadwick, Frank's team, and the folks at Compass Games, including John Kranz, who kind of runs the Designer Signature Edition project over at Compass. Very happy to get this in the house at long last. And again, we will absolutely get this played again at some point in the not hugely distant, might not be this year, but I expect this will hit a table at some point before too long. If you have found this video entertaining or useful, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel. Click the little bell icon to get notified when new content comes out. If you'd like to help support Ardwulf's Lair, that would be much appreciated. Please do look at the links in the video description to the Patreon, the merch store, and the Ko-Fi. Until next time, thanks again for watching, and happy wargaming.